Hi, I'm Lana from 3energyhealing.com. And what I'd like to do today is I'd like to tell you about my QHHT journey and experience. The first time I heard about QHHT, I was in the middle of reading the Convoluted Universe series by Dolores Cannon, who is the pioneer of this hypnosis technique. If you want to know more about what QHHT is, look at my video, What is QHHT? And I'll post the link here down below. But onto my experience. So I had been reading the Convoluted Universe series of books and completely shifted my perception of reality, blew my mind away, and was hearing about all of these experiences and accounts of Dolores's clients as she was regressing them over the course of 50 years. So she's, obviously the creator of this technique, and she had perfected it over the course of 5 decades. I highly recommend the books if you're open. It's very, very non-mainstream material, but amazing nonetheless, and it really shifted my world. So when I've always had chronic pelvic pain, and I have had multiple surgeries to try to figure out what was wrong. But it was in 2020 when I learned that I had a very, very large tumor growing in my uterus, and it was causing a lot of damage. And so I had to have that removed. Here I was naively thinking that, oh, great, they found a tumor. When they remove it, it will, it will eradicate the pain. But it turned out that that was not the case. And so after my surgery, while it did help, I was still in excruciating pain, and even more pain than I realized I would be in from surgery. But 3 months post-op, I was still in a lot of pain, and I still had the same chronic pain, and I was just beside myself because I cannot take medication. It makes me completely sick, and I would try, and I would get really ill, and I would, it didn't even help relieve the pain anyway. It just made me feel like crap. So I knew that I had to figure something else out. And in the midst of that, I was on medical leave, and I was reading these books on Audible. And I thought, you know what? Dolores, she's reporting all these literal miracles, like literally people healing, like in that one session. And I'm like, gosh, I wonder if this could help me. So I looked up on QHHTofficial.com for a practitioner, and I found one in Oakland. And shout out to Kaya, she's amazing. I booked my session, and even though, I'm very exploratory and open-minded, I am still a little bit skeptical about things sometimes. And I want proof. I want to know that, the money that I'm going to spend on this is going to work, and it's going to be worth it. But when I look back and I think, gosh, the money that I spent on this is way worth it for the level of healing and benefit that I got from it. And the alternative was just to keep being in pain, right? So I was literally at the end of my rope trying everything. So I showed up to the session, and we conducted the interview, and I was very open with Kaya, because the more open you are, the better you get the results. So we had a long interview, and she went to start to hypnotize me. Now, I'm going to just recount kind of my experience of how things went and the lessons that I learned from it. And I hope you find it as fascinating as it actually was. I hope I can explain this in a way that was as impactful as it was to me. But here goes. So my first scene that I came into, I was a 13-year-old girl wearing like a pinafore type dress, and I was dragging a cart with either a donkey or a small horse. And my job was, my dad was a farmer, and I was supposed to go trade the potatoes that we grew for corn. And I was on the way back, and during the trip I had crushed my finger. Now, mind you, in real life, when I was in in hypnosis, my whole hand started going numb, and I couldn't move it. And I remember thinking, oh, my finger is like numb. It didn't hurt, but I had physical symptoms on my hand. And during the whole experience, I had to keep like imagining that I had a bat, and I was batting away my logical brain, my thinking brain, because my brain kept wanting to come in and kept wanting to say, this isn't real. This isn't really happening. You're not really hypnotized. Like, this is fake, prove it. And I knew that I wanted to have this experience, and I knew that I was getting in my own way. So I kept imagining me having a bat and being like, shh, get away. And, batting myself, my rational brain away, and just surrendering to this process of imagination. And it didn't really even matter if it was real or not. And I'll explain more about that later. But so I was disappointed and scared because my dad was mean to me. He was very emotionally withdrawn. He was not loving at all. And I knew that coming back, the amount of corn that I got for the potatoes that I brought wasn't going to make him happy. And we were worried, he was worried about like having enough food. So I was very afraid, and he was waiting for me on the porch as the lights kind of went out, and I could tell he was really angry with me, and I was just so ashamed almost, and like scared and shut down. The next scene cut to me sitting by my mother's bedside, and she was dying. She had a cough, and I was just watching her die, and inside, the level of emotion that I was feeling as I was in this state of hypnosis. I mean, it's one thing to make up a story, but it's another thing to be intimately acquainted with the depth of emotion and like the thoughts, the internal thoughts that I was having as this young girl, as I was sitting there watching my mom pass away. It was unreal. It was so immersive. It was way beyond just watching a movie or thinking about a story and making it up. Like a lie, you can't dredge that emotion up, that level of emotion. I mean, when you're telling a lie, you're making things up on the fly, right? I mean, I'm not a very good lie teller actually, but I know for myself, if I'm making a story up, I'm not intimately aware of the internal thoughts of the character that I'm making up. Unless I sit there and really like spend hours and hours, but this is instant, right? So it's just all coming out. So, I was mostly worried about what was going to happen to me when my mom passed away, because she was the only one that was nice and warm to me. And she wasn't even that warm, but she was the only one who I knew loved me. And I also lived with my grandmother. I think it was my dad's mother. And she was just not warm at all. She was very cold and just a hard-working family, but completely emotionally cut off. And so that scene passed, and she took me to the end of my life in that life. And at that time I was 23, and I had a 3-year-old son, and the son was at home. But I was in an alley at dusk, and at first I had no idea what happened. I was just stabbed in the hypnosis, and I was like, she was asking me like, well, what was happening? I don't know, I'm just bleeding. And I wasn't really in pain or anything, but it was just bleeding. And she said, okay, go back a little bit to see what happened. Well, it turns out that the alley I was in was next to the saloon. And you guys, this is so vivid. Like, it was before electricity. The buildings were wood. I could see everything, every detail. And some things were out of focus, but the things that I needed to pay attention to were completely in focus. And there was just this random drunk guy carrying a knife that's stumbling everywhere, so out of his mind drunk that he fell into me and stabbed me and didn't even realize it. He did not even know what he did, and I didn't know what happened because it was so bizarre. And I stumbled into the bar, and I'm bleeding, and I'm going down quick. Like, I must be losing a lot of blood quickly, because I start to get weak, and they prop me up against this beam to hold the building up. And I start to come out of my body, and I'm looking down and just seeing these like almost like non-player characters where they're just staring at me and watching the pool of blood grow on the bottom of the wood floor. And at that moment, I'm realizing how much I was handicapped by being so emotionally closed off. I was a very shut down person emotionally, because that's how my family was. And I didn't feel loved by my father or my grandmother. And I just didn't even know how to express love. I didn't allow myself to express love. And as I'm dying, I'm realizing the biggest regret that I had was not being the love that I am, and my son not knowing that I love him at 3, because it's just, I was in a very removed family, of removed from intimacy, from love. And yeah, so that was kind of one of the bigger lessons. The other crazy part of it was that the guy who stabbed me, when the practitioner told me to look into his eyes and see if I recognized him, I did, from this lifetime. And that was astonishing, because the relationship that I was in this lifetime was such a confusing relationship to me, because nothing about this person was my type. I had dated this person. It was just such a dramatic growth period for me in that relationship, and after breaking up with this person. And I was still confused about, why did I even date him? But I felt like I had to in this lifetime. I just felt like there was something there that I needed to be with him for that little while. And sure enough, when we broke up, I felt transformed, because it was one of the first instances in my life where I went through a breakup and I didn't feel down about myself, like there was something wrong with me, or that I wasn't good enough. And I had struggled with those feelings my whole life. And in this relationship, when we parted ways, I was okay. I didn't get down on myself, and I actually didn't even get down on him. Like, I just was like fulfilled. And I honestly felt in this lifetime that I had the image of the graduation cap, the mortarboard with the tassel. And during a meditation one day, that I was like, I moved the tassel over to the other side, because I knew that I loved myself truly. Finally, after 4 decades of not knowing how to love myself, or knowing, I mean, I just didn't earlier than that. And so I felt like that was a huge moment in my life, right? So after you go through a life, you then ask the subconscious to help you understand what the purpose of the life was for, and the lessons of the life. And the lesson of one of the lessons of the life, there was a couple, but one of them was that in that lifetime, in my past life, he took my life away, but in this lifetime, he gave it back to me. And it's so true. I could never have put that together. I mean, myself, like, I could never have put that together, because it just, the way that the information is presented and how it clicks in place, there's just no substitute for that experience and the healing. I mean, I was so healed after that, knowing all my questions about that. I mean, that was an enigma to me. Like, why was I with this person? And why did I feel like that after we broke up? But it was all resolved. But the bigger lesson of that lifetime was about withholding and being shut down emotionally, and not allowing that love that you have inside to flow out, and the beauty that you have inside to flow out. Like, that life, when I went in the regression, it was so gray and drab and lonely and isolated, and just no joy. It was a joyless life. It was all toil and all work and all fear of being afraid of my dad and my grandma, and how mean they were. And leaving the earth knowing that I didn't allow my son to even experience joy, because I was so shut down. That was devastating to leave like that. And it actually relates to my next life that I saw. So after that one life, I went to the second life. And in that life, I was a Native American man. And the first scene, I was born. I was born in, or I was a newborn. I wasn't born. I was being born. But I was a newborn. And I was breastfeeding on my mom. And so I just got this feeling of, being outside. I could see the smoke from the fires that we used to keep warm. And I was aware. So at that age, as a newborn, I was completely aware and I knew my mission when I came here. And so did the leader of the tribe, the chief. So the chief recognized, there was a recognition when I was born that I would become the next. I was basically a shaman and a tribes leader in that lifetime. And so, oh, and one other thing, sorry, the stab wound was where my tumor was. So the reason that I had the tumor was because all of that confusion and repression, it consolidated into this mass in this lifetime from that previous injury. And it actually, the tumor really developed when I was actually with the person, the reincarnated person in this lifetime. So it grew rapidly during that period of time that I was with that person. So all of that repressed, suppressed emotion and anger and sadness, or just emotion at all, and all of the repressed love, it coagulated into this tumor that I created in this life, because I had to, that was a way for my body to deal with all of that emotion that was left over from the previous lifetime. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that as well. But back to the Native American life. So I don't remember where I left off. However, what I'll say is that as I grew, I saw that I had vision and I could travel, my soul could travel through meditation and through the sweat lodge. So I did a lot of vision quests in that lifetime, where I was able to go to space and I was able to go under the sea with my soul. And that was cool. But I also was growing up to be groomed to be a leader. And so, but when I was about 19, the white man came on the horse. And at first we were not at like a warring tribe, but we did, have defenses. So we were bow and arrow, and I had to lead the rest of the warriors. So I was in the front, and there was probably about 7 men on horses, and they were wearing blue coats. So I don't know what that means, but when they came up, we had our bow and arrows drawn, and I had to make a decision. And they had guns. So I decided that I really had an internal battle I didn't want to kill. And so instead of shooting at the person, I shot at the horse, and the horse buckled its leg and tossed the man. And they could see that we didn't mean them harm, but we were ready to fight. So with that, the white man got off the horse and they put their weapons down and they came to talk to us. And I really internally struggled because I had to make the choices for the tribe about how we were going to deal with these people. What was really cool about that experience is growing up in America with a capitalistic society and colonialism, we're programmed into this idea of competition and land grabs, right? But in that life as a Native American, I got to experience a completely different consciousness and worldview, where my main goal was harmony. And so in the end, as I was deciding, like, their proposition was, we're going to take your land, but you're going to live on it. We're going to build you these houses and we'll trade and all of that. But in the end, I felt like, okay, we could either go to war, but they're going to outnumber us and they have guns. So we're really toast if we do that, or we could cooperate and we could create harmony instead. And so I chose that. And by the end of my life, I lived in a small house that had heat, and it had a place to prepare, like an oven, like like a wood burning oven. And I think I had 3 daughters. The oldest daughter in that lifetime was my current daughter. And by the time I was 45, I had congestive heart failure. And that was because I had lung damage, but I think then caused heart damage from inhaling the smoke of my life. And in this lifetime, the current lifetime, my lungs are really impacted by asthma. And I've spent, I don't know, probably years of my life coughing, literally. And so the fire in that lifetime is what damaged my lungs. But that explains why I have asthma in this lifetime. So that was, that was crazy. And my lungs have actually improved a lot until COVID. So um so the other lesson that I learned was, at the end of my life, I was fulfilled. I was happy. And that's because I lived my life with an open heart and I gave love. I lived my life with a sense of peace and harmony and freely gave love to everyone and to the earth and just to balance and harmony. And that's how I lived. And I was not, I didn't have regrets at the end of my life, even though I died at 45. Now, my oldest daughter, on the other hand, was absolutely devastated. And that actually gave me a clue as to why my daughter in this lifetime is so connected to me. And ever since she's been little, she is just afraid of me getting older because she doesn't want me to die, and afraid of she's very guarded with our time together. She wants to be with me and wants to spend time with me, and, really cherishes our time together. And that explained why that was for me, because I always was wondering, like, what does she know that I don't? Am I gonna die early or what, but yeah, it's a leftover from that lifetime. So the amazing thing was the contrast between the emotions and the experience of those two lives that I saw. And in this lifetime, I've definitely spent most of my time in fight or flight and anxiety and fear. And that has to do with my upbringing and the things that I experienced as a child, bleeding over into trauma response later on in life and PTSD. So I have spent a lot of time in this lifetime with my heart contracted. And it wasn't until, like, I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago that I actually started trying to open my heart. And it's been a long process. And so that's been the biggest, probably one of the biggest deals in my life, is opening my heart. And, understanding how someone's behavior really can be coming from a place of fear or place of love. And a lot of people who are aggressive and angry, they're coming from a place of fear and a feeling of separateness. And so, really opening up my heart has taught me to have compassion for other people. And these two lives really demonstrated the impact and it's just a shame. It occurred to me how much a shame it is when people are so fearful and shut down that they don't allow their soul to shine to the world. And I still have, instances where I need to take the blankets off of my soul and let myself shine out to the world. But I've learned how to grow, and I've learned how to uncover that. And this session was really one that really helped me do that. Now, with all of that said, I still walked out of the office. And by the way, I had a list of questions, a ton of questions. They were answered. And that experience was interesting too, because I started speaking in the third person, like, oh, Lana this and Lana that. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. I'm kind of, at that point, my rational brain was to the side. I was effective at using the bat to, bat myself away. And I was just letting it flow. A lot of interesting, crazy things came up in that. And part of what I wanted to do in that part of the session was I wanted to speak to my dogs, because I had 2 dogs at the time. And one of my dogs was an incessant barker. He still kind of is, but he's gotten better. And then the other one absolutely would only pee on grass. And I don't have grass. I have a deck. And it's just, when it's raining or a huge hassle to have to truck all the way out to the edge of the street to go to the grass, because I don't have grass. And I wanted to ask my dog, Little, how could we help him stop barking? And I wanted to ask my other dog, Lola, God bless her soul, how could we help her go pee in the backyard instead of having to go on the grass? And so I was told during the session, and by the way, I handed my list of questions over to the practitioner, and then she read the questions, and I'm the one who answered the questions, because you're receiving information from your higher self, that part of yourself that is timeless, that is connected to the all, that's eternal, that is all knowing. And so it's just a matter of getting out of your own way and letting yourself receive that information. So I was able to do that. And what I said, and this is just part of, obviously there was a whole lot more questions, but it's relevant because of what I'm going to tell you next after this. So with Little, we asked the question, how can we help you stop barking? And he said, use the command silence. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, silence. Like who quiets their dog by saying silence, right? It's just funny. So I was like, all right, we'll try it. And then Lola, we just talked to her and asked her nicely, would you please be willing to try to go to potty on the deck outside, please? Because, it's kind of a big hassle for us to go outside all the time, and you're very picky about where you go potty. So please just try it. So I left the office and I was like, I remembered everything. And in the Convoluted Universe books, the Dolores Cannon had said that her clients didn't remember anything. And so I was actually hoping to have that experience, because I wanted to have that moment where, I review the recording and I'm like, oh my God, I said that? I don't remember that. That's crazy. But instead I remembered everything. And that made me feel like I didn't go under at all. And that I was like, did I just make all of this up? Like, I couldn't have made all that up. I couldn't have made the emotions up. There's just no way. Like, so, but I was still kind of skeptical, so on the drive home, I popped the recording on and I started listening to it, and I was thinking, we'll see if this is real. I'm curious, but I'm going to need a little bit of proof. So I said to the universe, all right, if this is real, Little and Lola are going to have to respond to the command silence, and Lola's going to have to go potty on the deck. Otherwise, I don't feel like this is like real. Well, lo and behold, guess what happened the next morning? And I was absolutely flabbergasted. I was like, I woke up, my dog was barking. I said silence and he shut up. Never would do that. I mean, we could yell at him all day long and he would, which we tried so many different techniques of quieting him. And he got quiet. And at this point I had told my husband, like, okay, this is what I agreed upon with Little and Lola. And he was just like, oh my God. And I was like, okay, Lola, let's go potty. And I took her out to the back and she went. Literally the first time she's ever gone on the deck. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And I got a little bonus after that too. So later that night, something else that I asked for in the session actually happened. And this is something that had never happened before. And that wasn't even part of my deal with the universe okay, I'll believe it if you make this true, if this happens. But I got a third point of validation. And from then on, I was like, oh my God, this is real. Like, I can't even explain it. Now, originally I told you that I went there for chronic pain relief to get rid of this pain. And it didn't happen the first couple days, but by the end of 2 weeks, the pain was completely gone and it has never returned. So that, I feel like, was a miracle, because I had suffered for decades with pain, with chronic pelvic pain. And they really didn't know why, aside from the tumor, because I had it before I had this huge tumor. And they didn't really exactly know why. They thought I might have had endometriosis, but I didn't. And they diagnosed with a few other things. I've had several surgeries, to both exploratory as well as to fix things, and the pain just never went away. So, I mean, what a relief. Like, that was amazing. And from there, I had a second session, which I'll detail in a different video. So yeah, that was my first experience with QHHT. I was absolutely transformed after that. And then of course I kept reading Dolores's books. I've read probably 8 of them so far, or more maybe. And they're amazing. And if you would like to have a mind shift and a reality check, go into the books with a sense of openness and a sense of what if this were true? What if this were true? And I started asking myself in some of the more unbelievable parts of the experiences. These books are Dolores's clients when they're under, I mean, the gamut of experiences that they have had and that they reported are just too mind-bending for me to even go into right now. And so some of them are so like off the charts, bizarre and unbelievable that of course at times during the book I'm like, this can't be true, you know? But I started realizing that some of the experiences that I was having was also bizarre and they were true for me. So I started thinking, okay, what if this were true? And as I started thinking, what if, my whole mindset and vibration started to shift, and I started seeing more evidence, right, of like that this can be true and that can be true, and oh my God, and started doing more research and started, you know, learning about these different topics that I was super curious about. And it just shifted my whole reality. And that's what really led me into becoming a QHHT practitioner, that and the 2 experiences that I have had while I have had my own sessions as well. So if you have any questions about my experience, post them below, or you can email me at lana@3energyhealing.com. That's my website. Also 3energyhealing.com. And I also have a social media accounts. My Instagram is 3energyhealing.com as well. So check me out and click like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you'd like to know when I post more videos, because I will be explaining lots more aspects of spiritual topics, QHHT, some experiences that my clients have had, just all kinds of fun out there stuff that you can use as a thought experiment. What if? All right, thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you soon. Oh no. Did it not? No.